Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Loudguns, and in today's episode we're going to be continuing with the new player guide, looking at the first of SC's professions, bounty hunting. Crime is rife in Stanton due to its rapid economic growth and the laissez-faire attitude of the government, so there's no shortage of work for aspiring space cowboys. We'll pick up where we left off in the last episode at Port Olisar. So we can't lounge around in bed all day. Hop out of bed by holding Y or holding W and pressing space, and exit the hab by interacting with this door in front of you. Head through this door, and follow the banister round to the stairs. You can take these all the way down to Deck 1, the main floor of the station. Through the door on the right is the central lobby, where you'll find the ASOP terminals. And to one end of the hall, you'll see the admin terminal. To the left of this is Dumper's Depot, a shop for buying ship weapons and components, and to the right is Kasaba, an outlet which sells player clothing. If we head down to the opposite end of the hall, that's where we'll find the other two shops which we looked at in the last video, live fire weapons for guns and Garrity defense for armor. So with the tour of Port Olisar concluded, let's start taking a look at bounty hunting. First up, we'll open the Mobby Glass with F1 and navigate to the Contract Manager. We briefly ignore the Bounty Hunter tab and go instead to the Mercenary one. So we're going to take a call to arms. This mission is issued by the Civilian Defence Force, and they'll pay you out for any and all criminals that you blow up on your travels. Bounty targets are criminals, as are the escort craft that fly with them, so ergo you can get paid twice for the same work. A call to arms pays out 500 to a couple of thousand credits per kill, so it's not much, but it adds up. So now head back to General and head towards the Bounty Hunter tab. The first mission to look for is the Tracker Training Permit certification. This is issued by the Bounty Hunters Guild and is basically our first basic proficiency test. We have to blow up a criminal NPC to prove we're good enough to get issued with contracts. The certification's going to set you back 500 credits, so don't tell me that you spent all your cash on burritos. One thing I am going to look at before accepting this though is the location. This guy is somewhere above Magda, which is one of the moons around Hurston. The Bounty Hunters Guild missions can send you anywhere across the system. However, due to my aforementioned laziness, I'm not in the mood to travel all the way from here around Crusader to Hurston in the little Aurora that could. I'm going to wait and check back regularly on this tab until the mission cycles to an equivalent one within the Crusader system. I may just kill time by looking at the threads I'm going to buy with all my new credits. Of course, you could be more productive. In the Crusader system, there's a mission called Unauthorized Surveillance Detected that is essentially just the same as the Halt Illegal Surveillance missions we were doing last episode in Hurston. You could always do these while you wait just to keep the cash trickling in. So the cert's popped up again, but this time the criminal's in the asteroids around Yella, which is one of Crusader's moons. So we're going to take this one by clicking accept. Since we took call to arms before the cert, our tracked mission is still going to be a call to arms. Click track in the bottom right to focus on this one, but call to arms will still be active in the background. Go ahead and grab your ship out by interacting with the ASOP terminal and clicking retrieve once it loads up. Just before we head off though, I want to reiterate that if you are following along with me, there's really no monetary reason to have all the gear we bought last episode on while we do this. Feel free to open your inventory up with I, and take off the stuff that you bought, your armor and your guns. I, for some reason, chose to leave the armor on. I think it's because I thought it looked cool, and I obviously regretted this at a later point. Port Olisar has lots of handy signs on the wall, and above you pointing the way to the landing pads. We've got to go to pad 2, so let's just keep following the path signposted to us. Before you head into the airlock and out into space, just make sure to do your helmet check. Nobody likes hard vacuum. The signpost will continue as we go outside, so just make sure you follow the right ones for whichever pad that your ship's on. I'll leave you to get the ship fired up and launched, and then we can look at plotting a course. Open up your star map with F2 and zoom in on Crusader by double clicking. We can now see a beacon around the moon yellow marked as target's location. This will be slightly offset so you can click on it rather than yellow from this far out. Hit set route to plot a 2-stage jump to the target, spool your quantum drive up by pressing B and calibrate the jump by aligning. Then hold it down to set sail. So it might be shocking and hard to believe, but sometimes the making of these guys does not go smoothly. Sometimes I forget things and I have to squeeze them in using cuts and edits later to make sure that you get the info in the right order. One danger before we get into combat is that we might get killed ourselves, at which point we'd respawn at our last set medbay. Since our last one was Everest Harbour, we'd then need to jump 40 million kilometers to get back to Crusader. I might have got reminded of this the hard way. So before we head on to our bounty target, it's best to take a quick detour to reset our spawn in Crusader. PO doesn't have medical facilities, but thankfully Grim Hex, the vilest pit of scum and villainy in Stanton, does. This is also orbiting the moon yellow, so we can set a course in our star map and go and head towards there before we go anywhere else. Grim Hex, formerly Green Imperial Housing Exchange, was a worker housing asteroid complex, before it fell into disrepair and was overtaken by outlaws. It currently acts as the safe harbour for anybody who's been up to no good around the system. There are numerous hangars at Grim Hex, but if you want to save some time, you can make a quick stop using these pads on top. No need to call ATC, but keep in mind that your ship is vulnerable up here. Still, it's an Aurora with no cargo, so I think that we're pretty safe. Once you're down on the pad, just get your ship sort of with the thrusters turned off, and then make your exit. You'll find yourself out on an open pad, but you're looking for the airlock entrances. Heading through the airlock works just like the ones at Port Olisar. And then head up the stairs to your right. Walk past the elevators and head towards the ASOP terminals at the end. Turn left at the T-junction and you'll find yourself at Green Imperial Medical. This does not look like the most sanitary of hospitals, but to all extents and purposes, it functions exactly the same way as the much better, nicer looking ones. Hit up the regeneration kiosk just over here on the left, and that's our imprint transferred here, so if anything bad would happen, we'll not spawn 40 million kilometers away. You just need to retrace your steps to find your way back to your ship. Right, back to our bounty as if nothing's happened. The second stage of our jump after yellow will take us to the target's location, out in the asteroid ring around the moon. Generally we'll come in aligned with the target's spawn location and about 30 kilometers out. In this instance the server was struggling to keep up a tad, so I just headed on in the same direction at a moderate speed. At about 8 kilometers out he's spawned and I've got the blue mission marker tracking him, marked as neutralise. The red chevron is his ship, so lock onto him with T, and evade his missiles or flare them off with H. Keep varying your movement as you approach to avoid taking fire and track the leading pip with your crosshair. You'll get a hint when you've got a good shot when the reticle changes to this offset cross icon. Just make sure you keep moving at all times, but don't go too fast or you won't hit anything. Down in the bottom right we have our target info MFD, and this is tracking the enemy ship that we have target locked. We can see here that our shots have stripped his shields, meaning that any further shots we land will start to damage his hull. Currently ships in Star Citizen have 2 health pools, one for the nose and one for the overall hull. If you degrade any of those to 0, it's boom. Remember to keep working on the trigger discipline we were talking about in the last episode. You've only got the limited amount of power in your lasers before they need the recharge, so try and land as many shots as you can. and just release the trigger if you find yourself drifting off target. Over on the other side of the panels, we've got our self-status MFD, and this is tracking the info on our own ship. Our shields are up, but the change in colour to yellow indicates we're getting shot. Shields will shrink down when damaged, but they're going to recharge if they have a window without being hit. So there's no shame in putting a bit of space between you and the enemy to give your shields a break, and ultimately it's better to run away entirely from a fight rather than get destroyed yourself. When turning your ship, it's often better to roll onto your side and pitch up by dragging your mouse up and down, than it is to pitch sideways by dragging your mouse left and right. Ships have different speeds of turning based on the axis, and usually the vertical axis is faster than the horizontal. Always focus the main bounty target first. If he kills you, then it's mission failed, but as long as you get him before tapping out yourself, it's all good. You can then choose to either warp out straight away using your QT drive, or you can stick around to deal with his escorts to rack up a few more credits through the Call to Arms mission. When you're done though, hit B to open up your QT drive, and just look for an OM point to get away to. Full disclaimer here, I'm no combat ace, but what I really want to do in this guide is give you the opportunity to get going in anything that Star Citizen has to offer. If you are looking to take combat a lot further though, I have a number of people I can recommend that you learn from, so just feel free to hit me up in the comments about that. But now we've got our first cert, it's worth taking a minute to talk about the different mission givers in bounty hunting. So first up we've got the Bounty Hunters Guild, and these guys issue certification missions. These say that you're good enough to take on a certain difficulty of work, and each time you progress up a level you'll get the opportunity to take a new cert, which you'll have to pay for. On the other hand, we have companies like Crusader Security and Hurston Dynamics, who'll then offer you the actual contracts for criminals. They're paying you to take out the bad guys in their sector of space. While you might have proven yourselves to the Bounty Hunters Guild, Crusader Security are also going to want to see evidence of your abilities firsthand. So after getting that first cert, you should see a mission pop up in the Bounty Hunter tree called Verified Freelancer Bounty Assessment. This is basically a repeat of the mission we've just done, but thankfully we're going to be getting paid 4k on completion this time, so we're going to go ahead and accept that offer. Before we jump into the target, let's talk about managing our ship's power. If you look down at this MFD, you'll see the ship's power triangle. Lock into an MFD or any panel by just clicking in the middle mouse button. The power triangle shows the priority in terms of power being given to ship systems. These are split between guns, boost and shields, and by default are split a third. You can drag the power around using your mouse and left clicking towards one of the areas, but realistically that's not going to happen in the middle of a firefight. Instead you can use hotkeys to move more power to certain systems. F5 will step things in increments towards power. F8 by default will reset to a third. F6 prioritises boosters, and F7 will prioritise shields. While this is more manageable in combat, I'd probably recommend that you customise your controls here slightly. So press escape to open the menu, go to options, key bindings, and advanced controls customization. Find vehicles power triangle assignments by just scrolling down a little bit, and click the plus sign to open that up. Then you want to set a bind to set to max brackets tap on each of these. I want these to be in a position where they're readily accessible and fall naturally close to where my hand rests on the keyboard. So I've set mine to 1, 2 and 3 for guns, boosters and shields respectively. I've also then rebound 4 to reset assignments, so that's nice and close too. You can go ahead and close that menu when you're ready. But now with a single tap, we can just send 100% of our power to a certain system. So now when I send 100% of my power to my guns, they're going to give me more shots per charge in my laser weapons, and the recharge time is going to be lowered. If I send 100 to boost or 100 to shields, the recharge times of those are going to be lowered. However, the downside is that drawing 100% of power to one system is at the cost of recharge rates in the other. So when weapons are maxed like this, shield recharge rates are slow to non-existent. so you'll need to get used to switching the power between the systems on the fly when it's most required. Managing your power like this isn't an absolute necessity, and if you're just worried about focusing on getting your accuracy rates up, improving your trigger discipline, then don't worry about it too much at the beginning. But it's going to give you a bit of an extra edge, which is going to allow your starter ship to go a bit further. Your reputation with the different NPC factions is tracked in the Delphi app within your Moby-class. It's just this icon over here on the right hand side. Now we can see that we've got a small amount of positive rep building up with both the Bounty Hunter Guild and Crusader Security. Each successful mission will increase this, and we climb through the ranks and unlock perks as we go. In the case of the Guild, this is increasingly difficult certifications, allowing us to take on harder targets for more money. And in the case of Crusader Security, once we hit some of the higher levels, we're going to start getting payment bonuses on top of the stated payouts for missions. Our current status allows us to take on the lowest of the low for now, very low risk targets or VLRTs. They pay 4,000 credits and involve taking on someone flying a modest one-seater ship. Something that you might see pop up in your contract list at this point is some evaluations like suspect apprehension. Be a bit careful of these because they're PvP bounties as opposed to PvE ones, and players will always offer a more challenging fight. They'll probably have more flight time under their belt, and they'll probably be in a better ship than you're flying at the moment. So you can go for it by all means, don't let me stop you, but it'll probably end in you going boom. One of the quick ways to see if it's a PvP or a PvE bounty is the name. So here we've got the contract for Irving Boppere, sorry if I'm massacring that second name. Only NPCs can have names with spaces in them. You'll notice when you created your account that you weren't allowed to include a space. So player bounties will always include a name which has underscores to separate two names or a hyphen. As we do more missions, we'll unlock low risk targets or LRTs, which pay 5k, medium risk targets, MRTs for 7.5, high risk targets, HRTs for 11,250, very high risk targets, VHRTs for 17.5k, and extreme risk targets, ERTs for 25k. Add the bonuses on top of this, which for the security companies start at 5% and head up to 20%. And along with Call to Arms, bounty hunting can become one of the most profitable loops in game. But just fair warning that it does take grinding up that reputation to get there. As time goes on and you start coming up against harder, faster opponents, you might notice that your Aurora is getting outmaneuvered. You might be having more luck if you chose the more combat-centric Mustang, and indeed you might just be a much better combat pilot than me. But I found it particularly noticeable down on the planets and moons where some of the bounties take place. I really struggled to get the Aurora turning nicely down there. So you might wish to take a quick detour to a place like Lorville at some point to see what you might be able to try out instead. You're not rich enough yet to buy a different ship, but you can always rent one. Once you've landed at Tisa Spaceport, head over to the Vantage Rentals Terminal, which is just right inside the doors from the elevators. If you just interact with this, you'll get a list of ships that you can rent for a 24-hour period. For just north of 15.7k, we can borrow an Avenger Titan. Or for just shy of about 20k, we could grab an Arrow, which is a much more dedicated combat ship. If you're feeling really spicy and your bank account's racked up nicely, you could even go for something like an Aegis Vanguard Warden, which is a pretty tough heavy fighter. For now I'm just going to grab out an Avenger Titan. Rentals will show up in your list of ships on the ASOP terminal with a timer showing how long is left on the rental. As a base they will last for one real life day. Apologies for the arrow in this shot showing minus 13 hours, it's a bit bugged out. If you are going to rent ships, it's just best to make sure that you have a long enough spell to play ahead of you during that time frame to make that rental cost worthwhile. The Avenger Titan though is a meaningful upgrade compared to our Aurora. It's got two size 2 laser repeaters on the wings and a size 3 ballistic Gatling gun on the nose. You can head in through the back, but also just make sure you're aware that there's this quick entry where you can get straight into the cockpit seat. It can save you just a couple of seconds each time you get in and out of it. By default, these weapons are gimballed, so I'm just going to hit G to lock them to the nose because I prefer the feeling of fixed weapons. But like I said before, just make sure you experiment with both. So while we're having a look at the Titan, let's also have a go at firing some missiles because I'm sick of just getting them lobbed at me. Press middle mouse button to enter missile mode. You'll see your default missile over here, and you can press G to add more missiles to be fired in a single salvo. The Titan can fire 4 at a time, but let's just set that at 2 for now. There's no sense in wasting missiles because they do cost money to restock. You'll notice just to the left of the missiles that they have a minimum and a maximum effective range, but you can only begin a lock once you can see the chevron and you can target the enemy with T. Once both circles have turned green, that means we've got a good lock on the target, but we want to get a bit closer to make sure they can't evade these missiles easily. Just press left click to fire off what you've got locked in. You'll notice immediately how much smoother the Titan is, particularly in the turns, so this might help you as the targets get progressively harder. A big downside to rental ships though is not being able to change out any of the parts or weapons. You're stuck with whatever default loadout is on the ship. Ballistic weapons hit harder than lasers, but they are limited by ammunition. Unlike the laser repeaters, the ballistic Gatling on the Titan won't recharge its ammo count, so you're going to have to land at a station to restock quite regularly. You can try to conserve the ammo. You can use just the laser repeaters, which will be on your right mouse button fire group to get the enemy shields down, and then just use the ballistics to finish off the hull, or you might be able to fly entirely just using the laser repeaters. However, there is a decent alternative to all this. The SC community is very accommodating and helpful to new players, so you can always open up your comm with F12 and just type a message in general chat asking if anyone has a combat ship that you could borrow. Within no time of asking, I had a number of offers, and I took a nice chap Groot Loops up on his offer of an Asperia Talon and racked up a decent number of contracts in it. As long as you're in a party with someone, their ship will be fully accessible. You just have to keep in mind that if it blows up, you won't be able to reclaim it yourself. The advantage here though is that players will likely have set their ships up with optimal components and weapons, so you get to try out the real deal as opposed to just the stock loadouts. And if you ask very nicely, they'll probably be happy to stick a full energy weapon loadout on it for you to reduce the hassle of reloading. I'd also welcome you at this point to pop into our community Discord, the link's just down below in the video description, and if you'd like to ask any of us for ships that way, lending a ship out doesn't cost the player who does it a thing. And it's a great way for new players to get a feel for different ships without parting with any cash, either virtual or real. So that's it for today's episode. I hope you found it useful. Like I said, I'm no combat ace, so the good news is that in the next episode we're treading more familiar ground for me and taking a look at mining. Drop a comment down below to let me know what you think, and if you get one in before the end of this month, June 2022, you'll get yourself entered into the monthly giveaway for an Anvil Legionnaire. And with all that said, thank you very much for watching all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you next time.